Hello, everyone. My name is Tyrone Lowe. The show is called The Legends. I want to thank everybody all over the world that actually subscribe and show me love. Without you guys, there would be no legends, and I really appreciate you guys. In the House of the Legends, she's a community poet. She's a spoken word artist as well. I bring you Dara Kalima.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So let's talk about spoken words. How would you actually define it?
So there's like 3 different levels to that, right?
So let's tell the viewers about it.
There is the thought process that once poetry is spoken, then it's spoken word. There's the slam side of it, which is the competition in the 3 minutes and 10 seconds. And then there's this place in between where poetry just comes to life. It jumps off the page and has a whole other energy. And there's people who are spoken word artists only. There's people who are paper poets. There's people who, like me, is a poet that can perform. So it's all this beautiful mix.
Okay. So let's talk about you, Dara.
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 Dar.
Excuse me. Sorry.
That's okay.
I get it right. Where are you based from?
I'm Bronx, born and raised.
Okay. And when did you actually start getting into poetry?
Oh, goodness. I started, depending on the answer, somewhere around 9, when you can find my Roses are Red, Violets are Blue, really bad poetry.
Okay.
I used to write that on like index cards and stuff when I was a kid. And then when I was 16, I found out I had a half brother.
Okay.
And I did not know. Everyone else knew but me.
Wow.
And then, like when you're in your teens, those friendships that you always had start changing.
Mm-hmm.
So between those 2 revelations, I was like, I'm just going to write. I'm going to write every month. That's my goal. 1 poem a month.
Okay.
And then when I was 25, unfortunately, I lost my sister to breast cancer.
I'm sorry to hear.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it just brought up the who am I? Where do I fit in this whole everything? How do I handle my emotions? And so ever since then, I've been writing.
So your inner self just contact you and said, listen, I'm just going to sustain myself at this point. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think I'm one of those artists that is an artist.
Right.
And so right before, when I was 16, I was also acting. And so when the acting moment sort of stopped, and it was just community theater, not saying just, but when that program that I was in had stopped, I was like, what do I do with this energy?
Right.
Give me something to do. And so it was paper and pen.
Oh, wow. And so what were some of the things that came to mind as far as when you were writing?
Mostly just
life experiences, things like that?
Who am I? Like, a lot of my stuff started with questions. Like, who are you to my half-brother?
Okay.
Why are these friendships falling apart to the friend? And just in the wake of my sister, it was just, who am I? Because she's 10 years older, and so she was the trailblazer for us. And if it wasn't her lead to follow, what steps was I supposed to take?
Right.
And then how do you handle grief? Because I don't think my family had a good example of it. So it was just sort of trying to answer all of that.
So that was actually your sustainment, just putting on pen and paper.
Yes, absolutely. Poetry has literally kept me alive.
And so due to the fact that you did that, how did you receive it when you was actually reading everything?
So I used to think I was really good.
Okay. All right.
I thought I was really good. And then I went to New Eureka, and I went to the slam, and I think it was like a Friday. So they used to have the slam, and then they had an open mic that was really late in the night after that. Mm-hmm. And I got on that stage and open mic'd for the open mic because I knew I wasn't slam material. And I did that one poem, and I was like, yeah, I suck.
Really? Yeah. But how was the crowd response, though?
I mean, people were like, yay, but there was no crowd. That was the whole thing. Like, you did it, almost everyone left after the real slam. And so there was maybe 20 people or something in the room. And it's just the last minute open micers. And I did it, and I was like, I'm not like these people I just witnessed. This is not what's happening.
So were you looking for a crowd reaction to the point where, you have that energy to say, well, I feel good about this? Or
I don't think I was looking for the crowd. I think I was listening to myself.
Right.
And comparing what I had heard.
Okay.
So a lot of people, the good and bad about spoken word, especially with the addition to slam, is that it starts to all sound the same a little bit. There starts to be a similar beat, a certain rhythm, a certain repetition of phrases. We're all writing about the same thing that happened this week, you know. And so and there's a cadence to it. And I definitely did not have a cadence to my work. I was just reading whatever I was writing.
Right.
And so I just sort of realized then that maybe I'm a paper poet. Maybe I should not be on somebody's stage.
Right.
But then I wrote my first book, and I was like, well, nobody gonna buy it if they don't know who I am. So I need
And
to
you
get on stage.
have written several books.
I have.
Tell the viewers about the books.
I have 5 books. I just released my most recent one called "It Is Abnormal to Ban Poetry."
Okay.
And
let's talk about that. Because you know what? That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
You know, when I started reading about that, I'm like, I have to really see what she's really talking about when she's talking about that.
Yeah. So it was just, I have written a lot of poems since the pandemic about what is normal, and that all of this is abnormal. The stuff before the pandemic was abnormal. The stuff during the pandemic was abnormal. And then, whew, after the pandemic has been crazy.
Right.
And so, you know, the job of a poet, the job of a writer, the job of an artist is to reflect what's happening. Even when you choose not to do what's happening right now, you're still reflecting the times in some way because you're part of the times.
Okay.
So it's just been me going like, you know, this is wild. This is crazy right now, and we got to talk about this. Or, you know, I tend to be a political poet, and so I just listed when I put this book together, I really looked at, I used all the work a lot of the work that came after the pandemic. I think there's only one poem in that book that was pre-pandemic. And a lot of that work is just about politics, about who we've been losing.
Right.
What is this world? What is this world that we're in? And just thinking we can do better. And like the title came from the plane of normal and abnormal. There's been book concepts in my head for a while about normal versus abnormal. But then, like, you know, they're banning books right now and they're burning them.
Right.
So we're not just banning, they're burning them in some places. And so I was just like, no, we're going to call that out just in the title. Even if you don't read the book, it is abnormal to do this. let you know right now, nah.
What was feedback like when people actually read it and they wanted you to comply to it? What did you what were they saying to you?
So it is independently published, so I don't haven't had a lot of eyes on it yet.
Oh, okay.
But one of the people who wrote the blurb on the back of the book for me was fully impressed by it, appreciated how and he's seen me perform. So this book is a combination of my performance work and my paper work.
Okay.
And so he just appreciated the way I sort of ebb and flowed through everything and take big issues on a micro level. You know, like we can talk about how, you know, people are getting slaughtered every day, but what does that mean to someone waking up and going into work? What does that mean to just trying to exist? Like, what does that weight on our bodies? Right. And so I sort of play between those two things, between a macro and a micro view of topics.
Well, you're looking at things more futuristic in a sense, because you're talking about things that's happening now. So you was actually trying to find a solution for your self-satisfaction. But were you looking at things futuristically too, to the point where you think that you might have an answer?
I don't think I have an answer, but there is a poem in there that talks about it's called The Day That Didn't Happen.
Okay.
And it's about if Philando Castile never got killed and what everything would be after that day. Like, it would be a normal day. Right. He would have been driving down the block. You know, the kids that he served lunch to would still get their meals. And things would not be this, like, mourning, a child having witnessed this, a partner having lost them, you know, and just, so I sort of look at least with that poem specifically, what the world could look like if this crazy wasn't happening to us. But I wish I had an answer. I don't. I think my job more so is to call it out. Okay.
So you look at things in the here and now, and how do you feel about it? How does the car respond with what you're trying to really, put out there?
It's great. So I tend to perform in mixed audiences.
Okay.
Meaning,
before you even say that, what's the difference between your first performance and your performance now? Oh. What did you take out and what did you add in?
I write better. Let's start
Okay.
there.
All right.
My writing is so much better. I use a lot of my acting skills
Okay.
to, and you can tell when you watch poets, you can tell where they're from. You can tell they come from a theater background. You can tell if they're a hip hop head.
Body chemistry.
Body chemistry, the rhythm of what they're saying, the games that they're playing with their words. And so when I am performing, I am no longer thinking about writing. I'm thinking about what is these words saying? What energy is here? What am I supposed to be crying? Am I supposed to be upset? How am I supposed to feel in this moment? And I think the thing with me as a writer, I write very much in the present. So a lot of people tend to respond to the emotions. I may not even be emoting, but I am because it's in the moment, and you have no choice but to be in the moment with me.
But what you're telling me, it's like the poetry daily news in a sense.
I mean, it is because the first book I wrote was came out of I was part of a group called Momentum Education, and that led me to wanting to write a book. And it ended up being like a Black Lives Matter book. It wasn't the goal. It just ended up being that. And then the second book came out because I was paying attention to the news. I'm like, if people aren't dying, then other people are having then people are being assaulted. And so I thought it was time for me to put my story out there.
Right.
So my Me Too book, before Me Too became Me Too, came out. And then Me Too happened in the way that we know it. And then I was in this group called Pantsuit Nation that was all about intersectional feminism, except for it wasn't.
It's deep.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
Okay.
Anyone who was in it back then are
Right.
like, when we talk about it. But that made me like, so that poetry book ended up being about intersectional feminism. It started coming about who has a Black woman's back, because Black men want us in this fight, white women want us in that fight, but our fight is still a little different. And when we're going, hey, no one's putting their margins to our level. Like when we talk about equal pay day, we're not talking about Black equal pay day, Black women equal pay day. Depending on where you look, that day is either June or September.
Oh, okay.
And there's literally 2 different dates for what Black women equal pay day is. And so when we talk about making that equal, we're talking about a white standard of what the equal should be. We're not talking about the other standards of who is not even getting to that level.
Right.
And so that was like, that's where that book came from. Like, we got to talk about what this experience is, what it means to be in this body, having to fight with doctors and all of that. And then I wrote my memoir because no one ever gets to know what's behind the story of a poet.
Okay.
And then this book.
It sounds like a crossover type of woman's empowerment, like a crossover in a sense. Has like an alternation in a sense.
Depending, yeah.
You know, and before you even got into it, what was your mindset? What made you actually say, well, you know what, I need to write this because I see it's going on with a lot of women, and what's the purpose behind it?
So I can at least say with Casualty of Love, which is the
Okay.
Me Too book, I put it together for the purpose of what I was seeing, because
Okay.
I knew that I ignored my friend's story when something happened to her. And I know that if I had listened to her story, I would have never been assaulted the same way.
Okay.
But I didn't. We don't trust women, even though we should. We don't believe women, even though we should.
Wow.
And so I didn't really hear
in what
her.
sense, though? In what sense?
When they say they've been assaulted, we're like, but what were you doing in that space? How did you get into that situation? And I never said it to her, but that's what was in my head. And I own that. I own that that's where I used to be. Now I'm like, oh, someone said it? I believe them. I don't care. I believe it until you prove to me otherwise, you know?
Okay.
But I ended up in my situation probably because I didn't see the warning signs that happened in her situation.
Okay.
And so when it all happened a lot of years ago, my therapist had me write.
Okay.
That was the best way she could get me to deal with coming to terms of what happened to me and everything. And so by the time this book came around, which is many years later, all I had to do was go find the poems that no one ever saw before. And we're going to put that there. We're going to put the story that I don't talk about in front, because I believe that someone else could avoid. Like, what happened to me is not my fault.
Right.
What happened to me is absolutely on the person who did what they did.
Was it a forgiving thought, or?
Say that again?
Was it a forgiving thought, or?
No, I think it's something that happened. Like, I can't
Oh,
even.
okay.
It's something that happened, and he was absolutely wrong.
Okay.
I understand and appreciate how things are grayer for some people,
Right.
but he was absolutely wrong. But at the same time, I was in a situation
Right.
that that helped attribute to that.
Okay.
So,
So you had an attachment.
it wasn't attachment. I was too nice.
Oh.
I was too nice.
And somebody just
Took
took
advantage of that. Absolutely. And so I write this stuff so that people can see it for themselves and
Right.
maybe avoid it.
In a testimonial way.
Yeah, or even like the best thing that ever happened when I did the book launch for Casualty of Love, someone left in the middle of it because it was too real. And then she came back to me specifically to apologize for having left. And she told me her
okay.
story. And what I signed in her book was, "We are greater than what was done to us."
Okay.
And we hugged it out. And that's the reason why I write, so that, a lot of people can't talk about what happened to them. A lot of people don't have words for those things.
Right.
And so I volunteer as tribute.
Okay. So we're going to take it up a notch.
Yes. Snapping.
Yes. The symbolism of that, the first time I actually seen that, I had a sense of cultural, being cultural in a sense, because, usually when you see a performance, it's like, but I was in a place where I actually seen spoken word artists, and at the end, everybody. So what does that actually symbolize?
So, I mean, it started because some of these spoken word gatherings were in people's homes.
Okay.
And you couldn't make a lot of noise with clapping because clapping goes a lot further than a snap does.
Right.
So that's where it sort of comes from, the still appreciation, but we understand that we can't break noise ordinances. But it just, as someone on a stage, especially when you're starting to forget a line or something, hearing that snap just feels like,
It's
I
fulfillment.
got this.
It's fulfillment, yeah.
It is
And a sense of encouragement in a sense.
Yeah, like I heard something a long time ago about public speaking. Your audience wants you to win. When you get up in front of people to do a speech, to do a poem, to do whatever, they want you to win. No one's sitting there going, I can't wait for you to mess up.
Oh, wow.
And so when you hear that snap, that lets you know either you're doing something right, or if you flubbed, that's okay. They forgive you. Keep going. And so there's something beautiful in hearing that sound.
Yeah. Do you know the originator of that, or was something that actually somebody just came up with?
No, I really think it came from like house parties back in the day,
Okay.
where, or rent parties where people would gather and they couldn't make a lot of noise. So what do? You snap it out, because that's the only way you can show appreciation. I don't think everyone was doing the ASL clapping at that point.
Okay. Poetry itself, I believe, for me, because I'm not a poet, but when I see a person actually do it, it reflects on me and say it's actually a gift, because everybody can't do it. And, from what I see from a lot of people that actually do it, the way they arrange it, the way they intensify it, the way they enlighten it and things of that nature, man, that is so special. So what's your thing on that?
My favorite thing is to turn the conversation for what you think it's going to be.
Right.
I like to surprise you. You think we're talking about this. We're probably not. Even when I do my sets, I am part of the Honey Drippers Poetry Collective, which is started as a mature poetry collective, if you pick up what mature means. And so when I do my sets, most sets will go from like political to mature. And you didn't expect to take that ride.
Well, okay.
But that ride ultimately makes sense to somehow, too. So for me, I think it's about the gotcha. And when I teach, one of my last workshops I taught was about the turn, which is that moment in your writing that people think we're talking about oatmeal, and we're not. And in that moment where people have to catch on, but it's something you do in your writing that changes it. And it's sort of fun. I mean, the whole point of poetry is to say the most with the least amount of words.
Okay.
And so how do you have an impact? How do you get people's attention in 3 minutes if you're doing it for a slam? How do you get just people to feel you or understand? Like, it's like a haiku. Haikus, everyone thinks they can write a haiku. Most people cannot.
Okay.
But a haiku in a more traditional Japanese sense
Right.
is 3 simple lines. If you translate it to English, because our vernacular is not the same.
Right.
It's 3 simple lines, but even if you get to that last line has a oomph. And I was breaking this down for my friend the other day, and what I was saying is the thing with a haiku is that haikus are written in the present tense. So Basho, which is one of the fathers of haiku, has this haiku, the old pond, a frog by it,
Right.
splash.
Okay.
And like I quoted it horribly, but that's essentially it. There's a million translations of that.
Right.
The splash is either like splash, water sound, kerplunk. Like everyone, there's some version of the frog just jumped into the water. But the whole thing is that it's present. You're sitting there, you see the frog, you see the old lake, and then all of a sudden that quiet serene is changed by that one splash.
Wow.
And I think that's the whole thing with poetry. Like, how can I get you for a few minutes to be here with me and to feel that splash?
Okay. What would you say to a person that actually wants to get into that craft of poetry? What would you say to them?
Study.
Okay.
Study. I know when John was here, he said, write.
He did?
He said,
certainly
right.
did.
And I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that. But I'm going to add study with that.
Okay.
Because the one thing I emphasize when I'm teaching people is poetic forms, learn the history, learn where these things are coming from, learn the intention behind a form. You know, is it supposed to be romantic? Is it supposed to be short? Is it supposed to be comical? Is it supposed to be in the present? What is it doing? Because even if you never, ever perform something that has a poetic form in it, what the poetic form can teach you will change your writing.
Okay.
Because a lot of people, especially spoken word artists, newer spoken word artists, just say all the words. And they don't know how to cut it down. So then I make them do haiku. How can you say that same 5-page poem in 3 lines? What's the point? Get there. And so when people give me their stuff to read, I was like, haiku some of them lines. I need you to cut these down. But now they know because they played with haiku. You know, there's like wordplay, or the turn comes from it doesn't come from a pirouette, but pirouette is a spin in ballet. But the pirouette poetic form is that turn. We going this way. Oh no, we actually gonna go over there, and that's what it does. Dead smack in the middle of the poem. So I get people to learn the history and the devices and the tools of the craft, so that they can do, whenever they're doing their thing, they're doing it better because that's in there somewhere.
Okay. It's been a pleasure, and I mean a pleasure to have. I mean, we could do this all day, you know, but
I get poetry
time
nerdy,
is a little bit up. And she's going to do a live performance for you guys, and she's going to actually do her thing poetically. So you guys stay tuned. And this has been another T-Love video production, and stay tuned for another show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's not just mine, his or her house. This is our house.
We got some fun people in the house tonight.
This is our house.
We be bleeding poetic songs, spinning lyrical verses just to make our reality something worth swaying to. We be rapping our truths in dripping red keys, hoping that the liquid pain embedded in the poetic tunes will make it enter canals more smoothly. We be making our hemorrhaging sound so sweet, they set their 2 steps to the beat of our agony. We be singing, be bleeding, be leaving, be hooked to leaves. Shock therapy or shot therapy, or no therapy for our PTSD, so we be singing. We be bleeding poetic songs from our veins, though it seems to be in vain. Each note seems to lose its message. The blood drives before entry. The inner ears must be filtering out the pleas, because the ears never seem to hear the cries for help that our poetic songs be bleeding, and we keep bleeding, we keep leaking. Maybe one day they will say they finally heard the truth we were singing, finally would have unplugged deaf ears, actually listened to the painful poetry and the melody, taking notes of the blood dripping. No. Pouring from the sound. And they'll finally start amplifying that which we be singing, have been singing, and likely will be singing tomorrow. Maybe they will notice the blood in our poetry, the pleas in our verse, the injustice in our melody, and start addressing the wounds in our tunes. And maybe then we can stop singing our bleeding or shucking and jiving for those that think our pain should not inspire such words, and finally just be about poeting. But till then, we be. In high school, a pigeon shitted on me. Actually, while in high school, several pigeons shitted on me. See, while in high school, I had an early morning class that made me pass under a flock of pigeons right on time for their morning movements. And they didn't give a crap that I was simply a studious student headed downtown to school. They targeted me as if playing for varsity. Pigeons, 5, me, 0. I can still recall the unforgettable feeling of their poop plopping upon me. Shit, they even got me on my face. Splat on my face. Stranger stare stranger as I tried to wipe away the disrespect. They disrespected me constantly, which probably makes sense. It was probably payback for all those times as a kid that I ran up on their flocks just to make them fly, just to make them scared, just to see them at ill ease. I was that kid that was unafraid of pigeons and who didn't realize pigeons had no fears either. They were unfazed by little me or teen me. They be unbothered by us, which is probably why most of us hate pigeons. If you Google pigeons, you will find 15 ways to get them out of your yard or 9 ways to poison them and not other birds. Pigeons therefore get no respect. They are flying rats, as such miscreants deserve only our refuse. But pigeons have been given a bad rap. Pigeons are thought to be dumb, but they're smarter than most. Thought to be a modern problem, but they have been the answer for centuries. And they're blamed for causing disease, but they can identify them before it spread. Pigeons have been marked for extinction, but they were forcibly brought here, domesticated, used as pawns in war on Wall Street, for mail and races, for entertainment. They were good. Then they were good for nothing. Nothing, not one single thing they were good for except taking blame, and I can't help but wonder why. Was it their gray feathers? Their shadowy hue? Was it? What was it? If we stopped calling them pigeons and used their other name, rock doves, if we acknowledge that they too are doves, would they be loved more? Be invited to the wedding, given a seat at the table, be fed more than scraps, seen as pure, as symbols of peace? Will we finally acknowledge the promise embedded in their beautiful coats? If we changed, actually, if you changed, would their lives finally matter?
It's not just mine, his or her house. This is our house.